Capital punishment is the lawful killing of a person as punishment for a committed crime. These crimes thought worthy of execution are known as capital offences, but what constitutes a capital offence can differ greatly between countries. Capital punishment has existed as long as organised systems of governments. Historical methods of execution were often deliberately painful and gruesome, some prolonging the pain of the victim. In the Roman Empire, crucifixion and death by combat were often popular. In ancient China, sawing the alleged victim in half, groin first, boiling, and death by 1,000 cuts were preferred. Europe's early methods of execution are well documented and include breaking on the wheel, burning at the stake, decapitation, drawing and quartering, and boiling in oil. Often, executions were public affairs, and in countries like America, souvenirs and literary accounts of the crimes could be purchased at the event. Interestingly, the move away from public hangings in America and England was opposed by abolitionists who believed that witnessing public executions would lead to the public being more critical of using them as a form of punishment. Modern execution is commonly actioned by lethal injection, but electrocution, gassing, firing squad, and hanging are still legal and occasionally employed by some countries. Others, such as Sudan and Iran, still practice methods such as beheading, stoning, and in some places, public executions still take place. According to Amnesty International, 142 countries have discontinued capital punishment by law or practice worldwide, and only 100 legal executions have taken place in Australia since Federation. The last person to be executed in Australia was Ronald Ryan, who was hanged in 1967 in Pentridge Prison, Victoria. However, the death penalty was not abolished officially until 1985, and in 2010 legislation was passed by the government to prohibit its reintroduction. Between 1965 and 1985, the homicide rate in Australia declined from 6 homicides per 100,000 people to 4.4 homicides per 100,000 people. Support for the death penalty varies greatly between countries and subpopulations. Folklier and Connell found a disproportionate number of white Americans supported the death penalty compared to Americans identifying themselves as minorities, highlighting a lack of trust in the judicial system. Additionally, there is no evidence to suggest that it acts as a deterrent to those who would commit crimes.
Moral arguments against capital punishment often around the disadvantages of punishing violence with violence. Additionally, some countries employ the death penalty of much lesser crimes where no harm has been done to another person. For some people, the capital punishment is murder. This is an act of violence. In the eyes of American government, capital punishment is the only solution to the problem of crime. Does that mean that the solution to the problem is violence? Is only violence. Thus, some people suggest other, less violent methods of criminal, such as long prison sentences. Capital punishment is irreversible, and when it happens, they lose their opportunities to be proved innocent by the latest technology. In other words, some people believe that killing a citizen by the state is unacceptable. Others who can accept the capital punishment in serious questions whether our existing system is reliable enough to support the capital punishment. This is a discussion about normative standards. Capital punishment can effectively control the occurrence of crime of a large extent, but in some cases it will be exclusive. So how to control these standards is very important. However, due to different religions and cultures in different places, the norms cannot be generalized. Capital punishment is the highest punishment while respecting the basic culture of different places. We needed a perfect judgment system to support it. In the process of deciding punishment, More professional and practical considerations are needed. Whether a person's crime meets the standard of capital punishment requires careful judicial judgment before making it. Judicial judgment is a serious process, and it is difficult to balance moral and humanity here. In China, capital punishment can be given as punishment death sentences for some reasons, which means there is a chance to be reformed and released from prison. But it also means there are chances to be reformed and secondary harm to the society. In some countries, homosexuality is even punished by death, which is against the will of human. It is because of the different historical background of each country that various evaluation standards are created. Therefore, it is a long process to find a suitable standard.
There are currently over 2,000 people on the American death row list. Recent polls have suggested that there is a wide margin of people who support the death penalty. However, human rights advocates state that the death penalty is immoral of state-sanctioned killings among those living in the US. As a community, criminals are locked away to avoid further harm towards the society. Some suggest that even though killing another person is seen to be wrong or unethical, allowing dangerous criminals to remain alive can actually cause a greater harm than those who have received the death penalty. Capital punishment can deter those who murder, as if they are caught, they are aware that they may be lawfully put down. The major argument for those who are against capital punishment is that as a community has a moral obligation to ensure protection of human life. Due to this obligation, less severe alternative punishments are encouraged, such as life in prison without parole. This is seen to be a moral way to ensure the safety and well-being of society. Over the past 2 years, inmates on death row have argued that lethal injections can actually cause unnecessary pain from the potassium chloride infusion, which is one of 5 agents used to shut down the human body. Not all states have regulated doses, leaving a wide margin in the sedation levels for inmates. Although pain is unnecessary, majority of professionals and inmates agree that this is a more humane way compared to other alternatives such as the electric chair. A challenge is the participation of physicians in the execution setting. Many areas have re-evaluated their current methods, taking into account the roles that physicians play and making sure that the constitutional challenges are met. This has resulted in questioning the effects that professional ethical standards of physician participation. In the 38 states in America that allow capital punishment, all agree that lethal injection is the preferred method of execution. Out of these inmates, approximately 83% were executed in this way. A major challenge for this form of execution is acquiring trained physicians to assist in the lethal injection. Although these physicians require knowledge and skills in the medical field, many argue that those who participate do not classify this role as a practice of medicine. The medical board has the power to penalize physicians for violating ethical standards. In Ohio, they had planned on executing a rapist and murderer known as Dennis McGuire in January 2014. The state uses an intravenously injected drug mixture in order to carry out the execution. However, there was a major issue. The physicians had realized that they were out of sodium thiopental, which is used as an anesthetic and one of the major key drugs to end the life of dangerous criminals. The US had only one supplier, which stopped manufacturing the drug. The other areas that have labs are in the European Union. However, the EU prohibits the exportation of the drug to be used for executions. These drugs are not tested prior to using them. Police had McGuire his last rites, as well as reported that he struggled to breathe for around 11 minutes and was pronounced dead 26 minutes after the injection. Although there are many studies that contradict one another, it would be beneficial to conduct further research to identify the common arguments to provide a better understanding about the effects capital punishment has on criminals as well as society as a whole.
Capital punishment is a difficult, multifaceted issue, and while in our corner of the world it may seem abhorrent, different cultural or religious viewpoints in other countries have made it a popular form of punishment. Ethical issues aside, the critical issues with the way in which capital punishment is put into action is a lack of regulation. Ideally, world leaders would agree that capital punishment must be entered as a practice. Given the unlikeliness of that situation, we recommend stricter restrictions be put in place to govern what constitutes a capital crime and regulations be enforced on methods of administering punishment.